bless the great state of Michigan. Pat, thank you so much for the very, very kind introduction. Thank you for your leadership in this state. Thank you for your strong, conservative, principled stance in the legislature. And thank you for your work along with our incredible Michigan team, along with Saul Anousis and Wendy Day, and so many tremendous conservatives across this state who are leading our effort. I am thrilled to be with each of you today. How many of y'all watched the debate in California? How fantastic is it to have such a tremendous array of talent on that stage? So many young, charismatic, talented young leaders stepping forward to be leaders in the Republican Party and leaders in the nation. And what a contrast with the Democrats. You know, I'm pretty sure the first Democratic debate is going to consist of Hillary Clinton and the Chipotle clerk. Well, no. Actually, that's not fair. That's not fair. We can't forget about Bernie Sanders. So now the Democratic field consists of a wild-eyed socialist with ideas that are dangerous for America and the world, and Bernie Sanders. And you know, it's really quite amazing watching the Democrats delay their debates. At first it was going to be September, then October, then November. You know, I think they may end up just moving the debate till 2017. It's not widely known, but the Democrats had actually planned to have an earlier debate. The problem was the debate invitation was emailed to Hillary. You know, we're here today because our nation is in crisis. We're here today because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Because our constitutional rights are under assault from Washington like never before. And because America has receded from leadership in the world. And it has made the world a much more dangerous place. And yet I'm here with a word of hope and encouragement and exhortation. All across the state of Michigan, all across this country, people are waking up. We are seeing an awakening sweeping this country, and let me tell you right now, help is on the way. So I want to ask everyone here to look forward. Look forward to January 2017. If I am elected president, let me tell you what I intend to do on my first day in office. The first thing I intend to do is rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. President Obama likes to say he's got a phone and he's got a pen. Well, you live by the pen, you die by the pen. And my pen has got an eraser. But sadly, the corruption has not just been limited to the White House. It has pervaded every branch of the federal government. And this is the most partisan and lawless Department of Justice we have ever seen. The second thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the U.S. Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and these horrible videos. The administration of justice should be blind to party or ideology. The only fidelity at the Department of Justice should be to the laws and the Constitution of the United States of America. The third thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. That means that every serviceman and woman has the right to worship God with all of his heart, mind, and soul, and his commanding officer has nothing to say about it. And that means the Little Sisters of the Poor, a Catholic charity that the Obama administration is litigating against, trying to impose millions of dollars of fines under Obamacare on the sisters in order to try to force the nuns to pay for abortion-inducing drugs and others. Now, let me give you all a real simple rule of thumb. If you're litigating against nuns, you've probably done something wrong. In January 2017, the Little Sisters of the Poor will discover that the case against them has been dismissed. The fourth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. The single greatest national security threat facing America is the threat of a nuclear Iran. You know, about a month ago, I observed, if this deal goes through, the Obama administration will become, quite literally, the leading financier of radical Islamic terrorism in the world. Now, in response to that, President Obama got very upset. And I do so hate to dismay the man. He interrupted his busy world travels in between the 8th and 9th holes to attack me directly. He said, what Cruz said is ridiculous. You can't say that. You cannot use that rhetoric. Well, let me give you a very, very simple principle. Truth is not rhetoric. And in the entire course of his attack, he didn't actually bother to try to refute any of the substance of what I'd said. So let's review the facts. Fact number one, Iran is today the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Fact number two, if this deal goes through, over $100 billion will flow directly to Iran, directly to the Ayatollah Khamenei. And fact number three, if that happens, billions of those dollars will go to fund Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and jihadists across the globe who will use those billions to murder Americans, to murder Israelis, and to murder Europeans. If President Obama doesn't like the rhetoric of his administration becoming the world's leading financier of radical Islamic terrorism, there is an easy solution. Stop financing radical Islamic terrorism. The fifth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. Now, you know, a lot of presidential candidates, both Republicans and Democrats, have made that exact same promise. And yet, inevitably, when they get to the White House, they don't do it. And what happens is their team comes to them and says, you know, if we do that, that'll make other folks in the Middle East really, really unhappy with us. Well, if you hadn't noticed, they're already pretty unhappy with us. And I'll tell you the single biggest difference between me and the other fine men and women standing on that debate stage is that with me, when I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do exactly what I said I would do. That's day one. There are 365 days in a year, 4 years in a presidential term, and 4 years in a second term. By the end of 8 years, there are going to be a whole lot of newspaper reporters and editors and journalists who've checked themselves into therapy. In the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will repeal every word of Obamacare. In its place, we'll pass common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. In the days that follow, I will instruct the U.S. Department of Education, which should be abolished, I will instruct the U.S. Department of Education that Common Core ends today. In the days that follow, we will rebuild the military and we will honor our commitments made to every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine. And we will protect the right to keep and bear arms of every serviceman and woman. That means the next time a jihadist walks into a recruiting station in Chattanooga, he's going to encounter the business end of firearms wielded by a dozen Marines. In the days that follow, we will finally secure the borders and end sanctuary cities. We will stop the Obama administration's indefensible practice of releasing violent criminal illegal aliens, and we will pass Kate's Law. In the days that follow, we will take on the EPA. And the CFPB. And the alphabet soup of federal agencies that have defended like locusts on small businesses, and we will unleash booming economic growth that will lift people up. Millions of people coming out of school will get jobs and move back on a path to the American dream. And in the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will pass fundamental tax reform. We will pass a simple flat tax. So that every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. There are about 90,000 employees at the IRS. We need to padlock that building. Take all 90,000 and put them down on our southern border. Now, to our friends in the media, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But if you think about it, Ron, if you imagine you traveled thousands of miles in the blazing sun. You're swimming across the Rio Grande. And the first thing you see is 90,000 IRS agents. You turn around and go home too. Now, some of y'all may be thinking, all of that makes sense. It's simple common sense. Live within your means. Don't bankrupt our kids and grandkids. Follow the Constitution. But can it be done? Can we do it? Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun. I think where we are today is very, very much like the late 1970s. The parallels are uncanny. The same failed economic policies leading to the same misery, stagnation, and malaise. The same feckless and naive foreign policy. In fact, the exact same countries, Russia and Iran, openly laughing at and mocking the President of the United States. Now, why is it that analogy gives me so much hope and optimism? Because we know how that story ended. All across this country, millions of men and women rose up and became the Reagan Revolution. And it didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. By the way, if you see a candidate who Washington embraces, run and hide. It came from the American people, and it turned this country around. We went from stagnation and misery to booming growth, millions lifted out of poverty into prosperity and the American dream. We went from our hostages languishing in Iran to winning the Cold War and tearing the Berlin Wall to the ground. Why am I so optimistic? Because the same thing is happening again. All over the country, the same thing is happening again. People are waking up. We launched our campaign on March 23rd at Liberty University. The New York Times promptly opined, Cruz cannot win because the Washington elites despise him. I kind of thought that was the whole point of the campaign. Listen, if you think things are going great in Washington, if you think we need to continue heading in the same basic direction, just kind of fiddle around the edges, then I ain't your guy. On the other hand, if you think Washington is fundamentally broken, that there is a bipartisan corruption of career politicians in both parties who get in bed with lobbyists and special interests and grow and grow and grow government. If you think we need to take power out of Washington and back to we the people, that is what this campaign is all about. So the Times continued. They said, okay, maybe the grassroots will be with Cruz. But he ain't going to have any money. Because those Washington elites control all the money, and all the lobbyists are with other candidates who aren't going to rock the boat, who are going to keep that gravy train flowing. Well, a little over a month ago, all of the campaigns filed their fundraising reports. Out of 17 Republican candidates, do you know which campaign raised the most hard money? We did. In just over 3 months, our campaign raised over $14.3 million. Second place was Jeb Bush with $11.4 million. Now, if I'd have told you, Pat, 6 months ago, that we were going to outraise every candidate in the field, including outraising Jeb Bush by $3 million, you'd have said I was bark at the moon crazy. By the way, someone suggested that for a bumper sticker for us. You know how we did that? That came from over 175,000 contributions. In all 50 states, people all over the country going to tedcruz.org. 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 It's tedcruz.org. Our average contribution was $68. That is the power of the grassroots. And let me tell you an interesting thing about momentum. After the first debate in Cleveland, in the 100 hours that followed that debate, our campaign raised over $1 million. Now, we just had another debate in California. We announced this morning that it didn't take us 100 hours. Our campaign, in the first 48 hours after the debate, raised again another $1 million. Let me close with this. For everyone here, freedom is not some abstract concept we read about in a school book. Freedom is real. It's personal in our lives. It's our families. You know, for me, I think about my mom. My mom is Irish-Italian, born in Wilmington, Delaware, blue-collar family. Her mom was the second youngest of 17 kids. They were Irish Catholic. They didn't know what else to do on a Saturday night. My mom became the first person in her family ever to go to college. Now, my grandfather, my mother's dad, was a difficult man. He was a drunk. And he didn't think women should be educated. And he certainly didn't think his daughter should be the first person in the family to go to college. Well, my mom ended up going to Rice University, graduating with a degree in math in 1956. She went to work at Shell as a computer programmer. Now, you want to talk about two industries, the oil and gas industry and computer science, neither one of which were very welcoming to women. My mom was at the intersection of both. She used to tell me that she very deliberately didn't learn how to type. She said, look, it was the 1950s. I understood the world I was living in. She said, I didn't want to be walking down the hall and have a man walk up to me and say, sweetheart, would you type this for me? My mom wanted to be able to smile very, very sweetly and with a clean conscience say, I would love to help you out, but I don't know how to type. I guess you're going to have to use me as a computer programmer instead. My mom is a woman of incredible courage and conviction. She's been a best friend to me my whole life. She is an amazing grandmother to our two little girls, Caroline and Catherine. And then I think about my dad, Rafael Cruz. My father was born in Cuba. He grew up in Cuba. And as a teenager, my dad began fighting in the Cuban Revolution, fighting when he was 14 years old. He was thrown in prison when he was 17, and he was tortured by Batista's army. When my dad was lying in that Cuban jail, covered in blood and mud and grime, his nose broken, his teeth dangling from his mouth, he told me he remembered thinking, I don't have any kids. No family depends on me. It doesn't matter if I live or die. But thankfully, God had different plans for my father. My father escaped Cuba, came to America in 1957. When he came to this country, he was 18 years old. He couldn't speak a word of English. He had $100 sewn into his underwear. His first job was washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. And he worked 7 days a week. He paid his way through school. And my dad and my mom ended up forming a small business together. Today, my dad is a pastor. He travels the country preaching the gospel. Now, my whole life, my dad has been my hero. But you know what I find most incredible about his story? How commonplace it is. Every one of us here, we've got a story just like that. Some of us, it's us. Others, it's our parents. Others, it's our great-great-great-grandparents. But what ties Americans together is we are all the children of those who risked everything for freedom. When I was a kid, my dad used to say to me over and over again, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That is why all of us are here today. We are here today because we will not go quietly into the night. We will not give up on our children and grandchildren. We will stand and fight for freedom. We will stand and fight for the Constitution. And if we, the people, rise up together, we will bring back and restore that last best hope for mankind, that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.